Gurgling music boxes click, whistle discordant melodies, their warped tunes scraping against the silence like broken glass. Each note shudders, a metallic rasp echoing through the empty gymnasium, the sound thick with the scent of brine and decay that my translation program renders as corrosive vapor. I trace a finger along the peeling damp wallpaper, the texture gritty with mildew. My breath fogs in the chill, each exhale a tiny plume in the neon noir gloom cast by a single flickering emergency light. The wind howls outside, a distorted hiss through broken windows, carrying the salt stink of the sea and something older, fouler. For corrosive vapor, the program insists. For corrosive vapor, I should have stayed with the code. The skeletal cat bones protruding beneath matted, grey fur darts from a shadowed locker, a flicker of movement too thin to be real. It pauses, yellow eyes fixed on me, then darts down a narrow hallway, its ribs visible beneath the fur. I follow, my boots crunching on gravel embedded in the floorboards, the sound unnaturally loud in the dead school. The hidden room is behind a loose floorboard near the science lab. Dust motes dance in the weak light as I push aside a rotten desk leg. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of old paper and rust. A single tarnished music box sits on a stool, its lid open, gears frozen mid-turn. I reach for it, the wood splintering under my touch. Object contact, temporal pattern activation. The translation glitches, the words flickering like a dying bulb. My arm feels suddenly cold, as if dipped in liquid nitrogen. Icy fingers, impossible, unseen trace intricate, burning patterns across my skin freezing me in place. The locket, found tucked inside the music box, is cold lead. I open it. Inside, a portrait of a woman with limbs stretched impossibly long, eyes too large, too dark. Her gaze seems to follow me. The clock on the wall, a heavy brass grandfather clock, ticks. But the sound accelerates, distorting, becoming a sickeningly faster fenter tick-tick-tick that vibrates in my teeth, pulling time taut like a snapped wire. My vision swims, the neon green glow of the emergency light bleeds into sickly yellow. Regret, the program whispers, but the word feels distant, wrong. The cat's purr, a low, resonant thrum I hadn't noticed, intensifies, vibrating in my chest, making the cold patterns on my arm burn hotter. The portrait's eyes, those enormous dark voids, seem to shift. The locket's metal is cold against my palm, the woman's elongated fingers in the painting seeming to stretch towards me. The clock's ticking is now a frantic, staccato thump, thump, faster than my own pulse. I try to pull away, but the icy fingers tighten, locking me to the spot. The woman's eyes in the locket, dark, depthless, impossibly large, blink. Once, slowly, deliberately. The cold on my arm flares sharp as broken glass, and the distorted ticking swallows the world. The translation program, glitches now bleed into my thoughts, static hissing beneath my skull like a radio tuned to a dead station. Error, cognitive overlay corrupted. Do you wish to continue? Asterisk, the words flicker across my vision, jagged as a broken screen. But my fingers don't move to dismiss them. The chalk is here, on the floor, a pale stick of it, half buried in the grit. I recognize it. Or I think I do. The cat crouches beside it, tail twitching, its yellow eyes too bright in the neon gloom. The purr starts low, a resonant twin thrum, vibrating through the floorboards, through my teeth. My pulse locks to it, a metronome counting down to something worse. I kneel, fingers brushing the chalk surface. It's cold, like the locket, but not leaden. Wrong cold. The kind that seeps into bone. The program stutters, asterisk, object properties, illusional stability variable, asterisk, I don't understand. But my hand moves anyway. A door. Just a door. I sketch it in the air first, the chalk dragging against the concrete with a sound like scrape, scrape, each stroke too deliberate. Too slow, the cat, purr sharpens, a few hum, that claws at my nerves. The door appears there in the wall ahead, a jagged rectangle of blackness. Too smooth, too new, like a wound in the school. Rotting flesh. It shouldn't be possible. The program screeches, asterisk, illusion confirmed. Stability, 87%. Asterisk, I draw faster. The chalk drips now, a slow plink, blackening the concrete. The door pulses, edges flickering like a bad film reel. The wind outside shrieks, carrying voices, Whisper said, not words. Just the ghost of atomic-era propaganda. A woman, as voice warped into static asterisk, duck and cover. The end is near. Asterisk, my breath fogs. The catty as purr is a drill now. Get her, and my skin prickles. I sketch an escape, a line leading away from the door, but the chalk betrays me. It fun once, the door. The line curves back toward it, ink bleeding into the wall like a vein. The program shrieks, asterisk illusion integrated, subject contains no escape. Asterisk the wall behind me the dissolve see, not crumbles, not collapses. Dissolve zeolite like film melting in acid. Static hisses where the bricks should be, and through it I see it. A construct of rusted gears bone, white and jagged, turning the wind howling through its teeth like a saw. The chalk drips faster, funty plink, plink, plink. And the door slams shut behind me. The cat, purr stops, the gears start. The program screams, asterisk terminal, error, reality failure. Asterisk my fingers press into the chalk, stained floor. The wall behind me is now a void, and something is coming through. The void behind me yawns wider, a black mouth inhaling the last of the school. Rotting breath. The gears spin faster now, their teeth grinding at 2400 beats, per minute to turbiter cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. The sound vibrating through my teeth, my skull, my 7 bones. The translation program shrieks, its voice layered over the gears, asterisk, external manipulation protocol, agent delivered. Asterisk the words dissolve into static, but the meaning claws into me. Agent delivered. Asterisk, not a warning. A confirmation. The chalk drips faster. Plink, 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 blackening the concrete like ink bleeding into skin. The construct silhouette sharpens at the edge of the void. A jagged crown of rusted gears, their spokes like ribs fanning out from a spine of white bone. Its hands are too long, fingers splayed, knuckles cracked and glistening with something dark. The wind howls through its joints, a sish like steam escaping a ruptured pipe. My limbs are lead, the clock on the wall, ticking, ticking, its hands spinning backward then forward, then backward again. The second hand a blur of neon. Fick, crick, trick. The sound distorts, stretches, repeats itself like a broken record. The cat's purr is gone, replaced by something worse, a fifaming, low and resonant, vibrating through the floorboards, through my fin teeth. The program flickers, asterisk temporal surgery, 1954. Subject, 007. B agent chalk. Asterisk a memory flashes, fragments of a medical log, yellowed pages, a doctor's handwriting. Asterisk the chalk is not a tool. It is a scalpel. It cuts time itself. Asterisk I should run, but my fingers press into the chalk, stained floor, leaving smears like bruises. The construct steps forward. Its feet are bare, the soles cracked and blackened, each step a cruncher of gravel under glass. The gears in its chest foot were faster now, the sound drowning out the clock, the wind, my own breath. The air smells of brine and rust, the scent of the ocean mixed with something foody organic. Something food rotting. The chalk in rotting wood. The chalk in my hand burns. The program screams, asterisk warning, subject cognition linked to agent. Asterisk my reflection in the construct's rusted surface flickers, then smiles, not my smile. Too wide, too many teeth. The cat's tail flicks against my ankle. Its purr is back, but it's not a purr anymore. It's a summertronome, syncing with the gears, with the clock, with the twembity of something deeper, something buried in the bones of the school. The construct's hand extends. Long, too long the fingers brush the chalk. Stained floor leaving scratches not marks but footy wounds, raw and weeping. The program glitches, asterisk error, reality corruption, 92%. Asterisk my breath fogs. The construct's hand reaches for me, the reflection in its rusted palms sublinks see. The chalk drips. The gears scream, and the clock stops. Its fingers close around my wrist. Cold, not cold. From cold. The kind that seeps into bone, into free marrow. The cat's purr sharpens into a scream, the chalk burns. The construct's hand tightens, the reflection in its rusted surface of elopsy, and the world goes white. The construct's grip tightens. A searing cold crawls up my arm, a frost blooming beneath my skin. The world's white flash recedes, leaving a ringing in my ears. By Thubi, whump, whump, whump. A sluggish pulse against the frantic gears. I gasp. tasting brine and something acrid, like burnt metal. The chalk in my hand feels brittle, threatening to shatter. My reflection, that mocking imitation, fades from the construct. S-palm, the cat. S-purr, a fractured metronome, continues its unsettling rhythm. The construct releases me, not abruptly but slowly, deliberately, as if testing the elasticity of my bones. The heavy crunch of its bare feet on the concrete floor echoes unnaturally loud in the sudden quiet. The clock's frantic dance has ceased, leaving a void of silence that presses against my temples. The translation program sputters, a strangled digital cough, *, temporal lock. Initiating realignment sequence. *, I stumble, my legs heavy, unresponsive. The air shimmers, distorting the corridor ahead. It isn't a corridor I recognize. The peeling wallpaper, once a faded floral pattern, now pulses with a sickly neon glow. The scent of decay is sharper, laced with the sterile tang of disinfectant. Flickering signs, written in a language I vaguely understand. Medical codes, diagnostic labels, cast long, distorted shadows. Hisses crackle, hisses. The neon buzzes at 18 hertz, a low thrum that vibrates in my teeth. The cat pads ahead, its skeletal frame a shadow against the neon glare, its eyes twin points of malevolent light. Fix on a door at the corridor's end. The metal plate affixed to it reads, in stark, blocky letters, Threshold, 1950s Radiation Lab. The words seem to vibrate, to fifid against my mind. My translation program shrieks again. *, anxiety, atomic age memory fragment. Probability of subject resistance, 17%. *, the numbers bleed into one another, swirling like dust motes in a beam of light. My heart hammers against my ribs. Futhud, fudathudha. A frantic drumbeat against the oppressive silence. I try to move, to turn away, but my limbs feel encased in lead. The cat, S-purr, intensifies, a low, resonant hum that seems to burrow into my skull, amplifying my fear. It's not a comfort, it is a lever, twisting my anxieties into a tangible weight. I remember the logs, the yellowed pages, the doctor's frantic scroll. *, the subject is exhibiting signs of temporal instability. The chalk is exacerbating the condition. We must isolate him. *, isolation, is that what this is? Am I the subject? Or am I merely a pawn in some elaborate, incomprehensible game? The construct stands silently behind me. A rusted sentinel, its presence a suffocating weight. The clock somewhere beyond the corridor begins to tick again. Not the frantic, chaotic rhythm of before, but a slow, deliberate pulse. Tick-tock, tick-tock. A metronome measuring out my descent. The neon signs flicker in sync with the clock. S-beat, a hypnotic rhythm that threatens to unravel my sanity. I take a hesitant step forward. Then another. The cat doesn't look back, it simply disappears through the doorway. The program whispers, * probability of subject resistance, 12%. * my reflection in a polished metal panel, a distorted, elongated version of myself, stares back with vacant eyes. The feeling of icy fingers tracing patterns on my arm intensifies, a phantom touch that sends a shiver down my spine. It's not a caress, it's a mapping, a charting of my vulnerabilities. The door opens, not with a creak, not with a groan, but with a silent, seamless slide. The room beyond is bathed in an eerie, pulsating light, and within that light I see Fifin him. Or rather, Tuvin Paim paralyzed, frozen in a tableau of terror. A perfect, lifeless replica of myself, trapped within a mirrored cage. The metal door slid open with a silence that felt predatory. The room beyond pulsed with that sickly neon glow, a bioluminescent cage housing a frozen tableau. My reflection, or rather, Fisi reflection, stared back, a perfect replica trapped within the mirrored walls. The construct hadn't moved. It simply watched DT. The cat, a skeletal shadow pressed against the mirrored surface, its purr vibrating through the floor, through my bones. Whir, thrum, whir, whirfran. The translation program sputtered, a frantic attempt to categorize the scene, * error. Subject duplication. Anxiety, identity paradox. Probability of subject resistance, 8%. * my hands trembled as I reached for the scattered surgical logs. They were brittle, yellowed, the ink bleeding into the coarse paper. The script was frantic, almost illegible, a desperate scroll documenting procedures I couldn't comprehend. The air hung thick with the metallic tang of disinfectant and something else, something vaguely floral, like decaying lilies. Click, scrape, click. The sound of surgical tools clattering in a metal tray echoed in the room, a phantom orchestra of suffering. I ran a finger across a diagram, tracing the convoluted lines of a neural pathway. The chalk in my pocket felt heavy, a tangible weight of dread. The translation program coughed, struggling to process the archaic terminology. Asterisk log fragment feline neural conduit, temporal displacement, Project Nightingale. Asterisk the words swam before my eyes, coalescing into a horrifying realization. The cat, it wasn't just a guide, it was an instrument, a conduit. The purr intensified, a low resonant hum that seemed to burrow into my skull, amplifying the rising panic. It wasn't a comfort, it was a tuning fork, resonating with my deepest fears. I forced myself to focus, to decipher the fragmented text. Temporal displacement via feline neural conduit. The words felt like shards of glass lodging in my throat. Crunch, whistle, crunchy. The neon lights flickered, casting grotesque shadows that danced across the walls. The program shrieked, asterisk translation correction, cat equals temporal amplifier. Asterisk the revelation hit me with the force of a physical blow. The locket, the portrait, the elongated limbs, the oversized eyes. They weren't a grotesque caricature. They were Signpoin, a future version of me trapped within this nightmare. My heart hammered against my ribs. Food, food, food. A frantic drumbeat against the oppressive silence. I felt a wave of nausea, a dizzying sense of disorientation. The construct remained motionless, its presence a suffocating weight. The icy fingers traced patterns on my arm again, a phantom touch that sent a jolt of fear through my system. They weren't random, they were a sequence, a code, a mapping. I grabbed a discarded pencil and began to sketch, driven by an instinct I could. To explain, the chalk in my pocket pulsed with a faint warmth. I visualized the construct, its intricate workings, the gears and levers that controlled its movements. The pencil moved across the paper, guided by a force beyond my conscious control. The program sputtered. Asterisk anxiety, unexpected sketching sequence, probability of subject resistance, 5%. Asterisk I was drawing its core, its nexus point, a schematic of its imprisonment. The cat's purr reached a fever pitch, a deafening drone that threatened to shatter my sanity. It was pushing, urging me, manipulating me. I ignored it, focusing on the lines, the angles, the intricate details of the construct. design. The air grew colder, the scent of decay more pungent. Hiss, snap, hissady. The neon lights pulsed in sync with my heartbeat, a hypnotic rhythm that threatened to consume me. Then, as suddenly as it began, the sketching ceased. I stared at the drawing, a crude but accurate representation of the construct's inner workings. A single word bloomed from the pencil, written in a crimson hue that seemed to bleed from the paper itself. The chalk in my pocket vibrated violently. The construct's head tilted slightly. The cat froze, its eyes wide with an unreadable emotion. The program emitted a final strangled gasp. Asterisk, error, system integrity compromised. Asterisk, the word pulsed, a crimson stain spreading across the paper, across the floor, across the mirrored cage holding my future self. The word stop. The door didn't open so much as unravel, fibers of rusted metal parting like a wound, revealing a gulf of blackness that yawned like a throat. The air beyond was thick with the scent of brine and something older, something foindev, the musk of damp earth and the metallic tang of old blood. My boot caught on the threshold, the gravel crunching underfoot like shattered teeth. Asterisk, temporal distortion, caught in the fracture. Asterisk, the translation program. Voice was a wet rasp, as if its circuits were drowning. The cat slipped through first, its ribs a lattice of bone pressed against the dark, its paws leaving prints not in dust, but in 20-time paw, shaped voids where the air itself seemed to peel back like cellophane. I stepped forward, the chalk in my pocket pressing into my thigh like a second heartbeat. The wind howled through the threshold, carrying the distant, distorted wail of atomic sirens. Cess, shh, slowed to a crawl, as if the world itself were holding its breath. The room beyond was a relic, peeling linoleum, a cracked blackboard scrawled with equations half, erased by time, the skeletal remains of a projector flickering in the corner like a dying firefly. Asterisk error, location identified as threshold -04, School Assembly Hall, 1957. Asterisk, the words burned in my skull. I didn't need the program to tell me. The locket in my breast pocket pulsed, warm as a living thing, and I knew this was where I'd seen myself. Elongated limbs, oversized eyes, the portrait staring back, accusing. The cat's purr vibrated the floorboards, a low, resonant hum that coiled around my ankles, climbing. I swallowed hard. The chalk in my pocket twitched and twitched. I could feel it the way it wanted to draw, to sketch the air into something solid, something wrong. The sirens wailed again, the sound stretching, warping, until it wasn't a siren at all, but a full laugh, high, childlike fumad. My fingers trembled, the locket's portrait flickered, the edges of the image bleeding into the metal. For a second, I saw Footy Mime, younger, standing at the front of the room, holding a microphone. My voice a hollow echo in the vast empty hall. Asterisk, we are the generation that will either save the world or watch it burn. Asterisk, I heard myself say. The words slithered into my bones. The cat's paw pads left prints that weren't prints at all. Threshold C, tiny doors in the air, each one leading somewhere else. Somewhere worse. I reached out, fingers brushing the blackboard. The chalk in my pocket burned. Asterisk, warning. Manipulative entity detected. Asterisk, the program's voice was a scream. The blackboard wasn't blackboard at all. It was sifting, dried, cracked, peeling away to reveal something glistening beneath. I jerked my hand back, but the image lingered, me suspended in the air. My body stretched too thin, my eyes too wide, my mouth open in a silent scream. The cat vanished. One moment it was there, a skeletal shadow against the dark. The next, gone. The wind died. The sirens cut off mid-note. The room held its breath, and then the next door slid open. It was made of glass, fractured, and written in my own handwriting, in red ink that hadn't been there a second before. 4D Barnaby Kensington, asterisk, asterisk. The cat's purr was a saw blade grinding against bone, each vibration syncing with the clock's sutok-tok-tutok. Tok-a-tok, a rhythm forcing its way into my skull like a drill. The air smelled of carbolic acid, the kind that stings the back of the throat, and something else, burnt wiring ozone, the metallic tang of gears turning in rust. My fingers twitched toward the chalk in my pocket, but the logbook on the desk fuddled me first. Subject, Kensington Seat Agency Assessment. The translation program's voice wasn't a voice at all, just a dry, staticky whisper pressed against my eardrums, the words crawling out of the pages like maggots. Diminished agency manipulated. The ink was red. Not the red of blood, but the red of Femdiera messages. The kind that flashes across a screen before the system collapses. The cat's tail lashed, its ribs clicking like dominoes, and I realized its purr wasn't just sound. It was for language, a command buried in the vibration, a voice I couldn't hear but felt pressing against my ribs like barbed wire. Move. Would ye breathe? Obey. Obey lunged for the door, but the chalk in my pocket ignited, a searing heat like a brand against my thigh, and the world twin-split. The air itself unzipped, stitching itself back together around me in the shape of a cage bars of solidified shadow, each one humming with the same distorted clockwork siphoned. Tick-tock, tick-tock, the sound of gears grinding my bones. The cat's eyes glowed, twin embers in its skull, and its purr became a Thoven laugh, high and brittle, echoing off the walls that weren't walls anymore but teethed. The construct stepped forward. It was a fusion of bone and rusted gears, its limbs too long, its joints bending in ways that made my stomach clench. The gears in its chest pulsed with the clock's rhythm, each rotation dragging the air into a slow, sickening fizzle-up. I could see it now. The school wasn't a building. It was a 4D machine, a scalpel, a vivisection table. The procedures hadn't been on me, they'd been on the 4D walls, the 4D floors share. The children who'd screamed themselves into silence, their voices still vibrating in the dust like trapped ghosts. The cage door locked with a footing click, the same sound the locket made when it pulsed, and then the gears in the construct's chest aligned. The clocks in tok-tok-tok-tapu-tok. Became a 4D became. The chalk burned against my palm, its heat a living thing coiling up my wrist, like smoke from a fire no one sees. I wrote the code in jagged strokes. Z, the letters clawing at the air before settling into the wall, the black lines sinking into the plaster like veins. The translation program's voice unspooled in my skull, not words but in screams wrapped in static, each syllable a needle dragged across my nerves, regret recoded as control. My fingers trembled. The cat's purr had bled into the clock's sivin tok tok tokin tok. The rhythm now a saw cutting through my ribs, each vibration a command I couldn't refuse. Breathe slower. Stay still. Obey. The wall Sorn breathed back. The chalk's ink bubbled, the letters twisting into something else. Not release, but a cage. The bars forming in the plaster, each one a fracture of light and shadow, humming like a live wire. The construct's gears groaned from the other side of the room, the sound of metal teeth grinding together. The air thick with the scent of burnt wiring and something older. Something wet when. My breath hitched. The paranoia wasn't mine. It was the construct's swan food. It had fed on my doubt, my hesitation, the way I'd always expected the walls to listen. The translation glitched again, the words dissolving into white noise, night agency, diminished. I laughed, a dry cracking sound, because I'd known it all along. The fear hadn't been mine to begin with. The cat's ribs clicked, its tail lashing like a whip against the floor. The neon glow from the locket painted its skeletal frame in sickly green and violet, the bones stark against its matted fur. It sat beside me, its eyes two black holes, and I saw it, the reflection of the portrait staring back, the elongated limbs, the oversized eyes, the smile too wide for a human face. The purr deepened, vibrating through my teeth, and I felt it the dissolution of Twenmai, not into nothing, but into nothing. The construct's gears whirred faster, the clock's tick accelerating into a stutter, a scream, the sound of time unraveling. The chalk's heat seared my skin, but I didn't move, didn't fight. The cat's eyes locked onto mine, and I saw the truth in them. I had never been the one in control. The wall pulled, the bars of shadow wrapped around my wrists, cold and slick, like fingers dragging me under. The translation program's voice faded into silence, replaced by the further slurp of the gears turning, the further click-click of a locket's pulse, the further tok-tok-tok of a clock counting down to something I could no longer name. The cat's purr became a metronome, steady and unyielding, and I felt my agency dissolve like sugar in water. The last thing I saw was the cat's reflection in its eyes, the portrait's elongated limbs, the oversized grin, the full knowledge that I had always been its puppet. The wall swallowed me whole. The tape hissed, the static a serpent, uncoiling from the spool. Each syllable Barnaby's voice carved into the dark like a surgeon's blade. It was never me. The translation program spat the words back at me, the letters bleeding neon across the screen, never in jagged red Timpimbi mind dissolving into green static. My fingers hovered over the playback button, the air thick with the scent of ozone and old paper. The investigator's log said he'd died in the archive, but the tapes didn't lie. They never did, I rewound. The tape screeched T, the sound of metal teeth stripping flesh from bone, and the log's glitched agency diminished, flickered for a second, before vanishing. My breath fogged the glass of the evidence locker, the condensation forming patterns like the chalk script, like the bars of the cage Barnaby had described. The surgical reports were next. Feline-induced temporal dissonance. The words jumped off the page, the ink smudged as if something had pressed its fingers into the margins. I traced the cat's bones in the diagram, ribs like a starving thing, spine curved too sharp, and my stomach twisted. The cat's purr had been a metronome, Barnaby's log said. A countdown. The tape rewound again, faster this time. The sound of it a tear, a scream compressed into seconds. The translation glitched. You are now in the archive. My pulse hammered in my throat. The footsteps started then. Click, click, click. On gravel, not outside, but tooty the hallway. The walls. The investigator's notes said they were in the walls. I turned. The fluorescent light flickered. The buzz of Futinhum, like the construct's gears. The tape hissed, the static forming shapes, a cage, a cat, a man with elongated limbs pressed against the glass. The reflection wasn't mine. The footsteps came closer, the gravel crunching like bones underfoot. My hands shook. The log said Barnaby had seen it. The dissolution of 20 might into 20 the cat's eyes. The portrait's grin. The tape stopped. A static held. A fwid breath. A fwid. The footsteps halted at the door. The translation glitched again, Fugret, recoded as control. My skin prickled. The chalk's heat. The wall's breath. The footsteps started moving again, slower now, deliberate, the gravel twins slurping under each step. The door creaked open. The light went out. The last thing I saw was the cat's reflection in the glass, the bones, the grin, the knowledge that I had never been the one in control. The walls pult. The door creaked open. a dry rasp like dead leaves skittering across concrete. The light died. Not a gradual dimming, but a hard final twin snap of the circuit. Darkness swallowed the evidence locker, thick and cold as the grave. My breath fogged the glass again. But this time the condensation didn't form patterns. It triptych'd, a slow, heavy plink 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 onto the floor, each drop echoing in the sudden silence. The tick-tick-tick of the wall clock I'd ignored moments before suddenly reversed, becoming a sickening, sick tuck-tuck-tuck. Each sound a tiny, deliberate footy crunch underfoot. The footsteps had stopped. The gravel was gone. Only the thud tuck-tuck-tuck and the drip-drip-drip of condensation. For regret, recoded as control. The words burned behind my eyes, the translation glitch now a permanent scar on my mind. I wasn't hearing the logs, I was the log. Barnaby's death wasn't an end, it was the fooding climaxes. The school wasn't a building, it was a cage. The construct wasn't rust and gears, it was twin-time, shaped by Barnaby's regret, channeling through the cat's skeletal purr, fifline, induced temporal dissonance and the surgical reports lied. The cat wasn't a victim, it was the Fidiquinque. My fingers, slick with cold sweat, traced the edge of the evidence locker. The metal was ice, but beneath the chill, something else, faint, insistent, tracing on my forearm, like phantom fingernails. I jerked my arm back. The sensation vanished, leaving only the memory of cold, finsensory anomaly, icy fingers. The chalk drawing, the logs, Barnaby's final act. I saw it now, not through the logs, but in the static bleeding from the dead tape player. The chalk wasn't just drawing, it was foodie, unraveling. I stumbled towards the main archive room, the foodie tuck-tuck-tucked of the clock. Now a frantic foodie tick-tick-ticking inside my skull, counting down the seconds of my own dissolution. The neon sign above the archive entrance flickered weakly. Not the usual garish red, but a sickly pulsing blue-green, like a dying star. And there, etched in the flickering light, was the equation. Barnaby's final chalk drawing, projected onto the wall by the failing sign, complex symbols swirling, lines of light dissolving into the air, unraveling the very structure of the school. The air hummed with the sound of tearing fabric, a high-pitched foodie shriek that vibrated in my molars. The walls weren't pulling me in anymore, they were shooken unraveling. The cat stood in the center of the room, not in the reflection but tweety real. Its ribs were sharp, protruding like a cage, the bone structure matching the rusted gears of the construct I'd glimpsed in the static. Its eyes, huge and dark, held no malice, only a terrible ancient fight of recognition. Its purr wasn't a metronome anymore, it was a forte, a sound that resonated with the forte tuck-tuck-tuck-tuck of the clock, amplifying the dissonance. My stomach clenched. Amplifier. Its purrs intensify the protagonist's emotions. My regret, Barnaby's regret, Fukenmoy regret, was the fuel. The equation glowed brighter, the symbols shifting, rearranging, no escape. The words weren't in the equation, they were the fun sign. The neon sign flared, the blue-green light intensifying, searing the retinas. Barnaby's name etched in the light, then the words, Vino escaped. The light didn't just glow, it pulsed a slow, heavy twin thump that matched the findafte of my dying heart. The walls dissolved into 1,000 points of cosmic static, a million fractured stars. The cat's purr became the only sound, a deep, resonant twinithrum that filled the static, the only thing left in the unraveling. The chalk dust on the floor shimmered, forming the equation, forming Barnaby's name, forming the word foodie no escape, in the dust, in the light, in the static, in the sound of the purr. The last thing I was Barnaby. The last thing I saw was the cat's bone structure, the equation, and the neon sign, all bleeding together into the fithufty of the static. The walls pulled, and I was no longer inside the school. I was inside the unraveling.